Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville Fiber Internet, streaming TV, home security and automation in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Mallard Grodner Attorneys providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. lawmg.com. IU Alumni Association connecting IU's network of alumni and sharing the Indiana spirit through scholarships, advocacy, and volunteerism. alumni.iu.edu. IU Center for Rural Engagement extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. With COVID-19 restrictions being lifted across the country, people are again taking to the skies for business and leisure.
There's a lot more people now than there was then.
Ahead, how airports and airlines are handling the increase in volume. Having a woman driving in this weekend's Indianapolis 500 isn't unusual, but the fact that her car's owner and a majority of her pit crew are women is.
It was obvious to me that this is something where women could not only belong but thrive.
It's part of new track owner Roger Penske's initiative to diversify IndyCar racing. And truckers are asking the state to increase the number of parking spots available at rest stops, which are essential layovers for long-haul truck drivers. Those stories, plus the latest headlines, right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Well, pressure is building on Indiana University to repeal its requirement that students, faculty, and staff receive a COVID-19 vaccination. The vast majority of the Indiana Senate Republican caucus sent a letter to IU this week expressing grave concerns over what they call its heavy-handed mandate. Now, under IU's policy, students would have their classes canceled and university privileges revoked if they aren't vaccinated. Staff and faculty would lose their jobs. The letter says the policy would force students to make a decision based on economics rather than health and individual responsibility. State Attorney General Todd Rokita says the policy violates a new state law banning governments from requiring so-called COVID passports. We're joined now by Indiana University Professor of Law Jody Madeira for more on the issue. Hello, Professor. You know, the disagreement over IU's vaccine policy seems to center around whether IU is a government institution or not. But, you know, I would imagine the university took a long look at any type of legal challenges before issuing its policy, right?
Yes, I'm sure that it did, because our IU council team here, they're among the best. I know them well, and they're very on top of it. You know, at this time, there is a legitimate legal dispute, I think, about whether Indiana University is considered a state entity and to what extent.
Now, the bill's authors and sponsors have said the law banning the state government from requiring a vaccine passport wasn't meant to include K-12 schools or public universities. Is that right?
Yes, but unfortunately, we cannot consider that information in really interpreting this law. You know, the law refers to a state and to a local unit when prescribing the issuance of vaccine passports. And the Attorney General's office has actually issued an informal opinion that the law should be read to apply to all parts of the state, including state universities. But there's a good argument on both sides.
So do you expect the legislators to sue the university over the new law or the new policy? I guess what happens now?
Well, I think the legislators could very well try to sue, because this is a dispute that needs to be resolved. You know, and on the one hand, state universities benefit from sovereign immunity, the inability to be sued like many other state agencies. But on the other hand, they're separately defined in law and they have their own boards of trustees. So I think it's a very open question.
Indiana University already requires a number of vaccines for students. So what makes the COVID-19 vaccine different?
That's an excellent question. And, you know, of course, they require diphtheria, tetanus, MMR, meningitis. But I think that what the legislators are concerned about is that the COVID vaccine has been approved under emergency use authorizations, and it does not have full FDA approval. However, this actually doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference whether, you know, emergency use authorization or final approval. An entity can require it either way.
All right, Professor Madeira, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Well, with COVID-19 vaccines widely available, more people are venturing out into the nation's airports for the first time in over a year. Brock Turner explains how the restart of travel is already looking different.
While reminders of the last year remain,
welcome to Indianapolis International Airport. Please take care before you take off. Wear a face covering or mask. Practice social distancing.
the lines and increased activity are signs summer travel is about to take off. Jerry Huntsman was one of many passing through the Indianapolis International Airport this week. He and his family are traveling to Denver to celebrate their daughter's graduation from IUPUI. He flew last summer to Maine, but says he noticed one big difference before even making it past security.
There's a lot more people now than there was then.
While traffic is increasing at the Indianapolis International Airport, it looks significantly different than it did in 2019. Leisure travelers are returning quickly, but that can't be said for more lucrative business travelers. And large legacy carriers have taken notice, offering routes to more leisure destinations.
A lot of people have cabin fever and they want to go out and they want to travel and they want to go to sun and fun destinations, which they're doing right now. And that's driving a lot of our travel. The leisure travel is driving most of our travel right now. The business travel is a very small component. It'll continue to grow and stabilize.
Rodriguez believes up to 25% of pre-pandemic business travel could never return, but he says the airport is no longer in as dire of a financial situation as it was this time last year. It's just serving far fewer passengers.
We're back to business as usual for a smaller footprint of an airport, for lack of a better term. You know, we almost had 10 million passengers, and we were expecting 10 million in 2020. We almost had 10 million in 2019. So we're probably operating right now an airport that runs about 5 million passengers a year.
While the number of passengers flying through U.S. airports is nowhere close to pre-pandemic levels, leisure travel is driving the increase. Airlines serving those customers are likely primed for a quicker recovery, according to experts. That's good news for Indy's newest carrier.
Here at Sun Country, we're an exclusively leisure airline.
The Minneapolis-based carrier began its first scheduled service to Indianapolis this week and plans a route to Orlando later this year. These new routes are only possible due to the increase in leisure travel.
The first part of February, there was a noticeable pickup in demand. As then we got sort of into the early part of April, there was another inflection point, and the momentum continues to be there.
While Whitney admits traffic on his airline hasn't returned to pre-pandemic levels just yet, demand is increasing by the day.
But we're definitely in a different place today than we were, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, and a year, certainly. So, when it comes back, I think the momentum tells us that on the domestic leisure side, we will get there in the not too distant future. And so that's sort of what we're planning for.
That's good news for travelers like the Huntsmans, who are ready to experience all of the destinations they missed last year. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Brock Turner.
Rodriguez estimates it could be 2024 until international traffic returns to pre-pandemic levels. While passenger traffic is down, the airport handled 11% more air cargo last year than it did in 2019. Early standardized testing results show an overall drop in scores across Indiana schools. The iLearn scores in math are particularly low, but the Indiana Department of Education is reassuring families the decrease was expected. Last year, iLearn testing was canceled due to the pandemic. State lawmakers say this year's results will not hold test scores accountable when it comes to funding. iLearn results go public July 1st. Indiana Democrats are getting a boost from the National Party, in part because of Republicans' political domination in the Hoosier state. A new fundraising agreement between state parties and the Democratic National Committee will provide a financial boost to every state. But those considered red states, ones that have a supermajority of Republicans in the state legislature and no Democratic senator or governor, like Indiana, will get more money per month than others. Chair Mike Schmuel wants to use some of that money for year-round organizing.
putting staff and people on the ground across Indiana to make sure that they're working in communities in different counties and different parts of the state and forming relationships with people.
Shmuel says the new agreement will also enhance data sharing between the National Party and Democratic organizations across the state. The Environmental Protection Agency took steps this month to begin delisting 3 Bloomington Superfund sites from the EPA's national priorities list. Sarah Vaughn reports.
Soil at Neal's Landfill, Lemon Lane Landfill, and Bennett Stone Quarry was contaminated when PCBs leaked from dumped capacitors used in electrical equipment manufactured by Westinghouse in the 1950s. When CBS Viacom bought Westinghouse, it became responsible for a cleanup effort spanning more than 35 years across the 3 sites. Tom Alcamo of the EPA says the move to delist the sites means CBS has completed all its required construction activities. That means excavating contaminated material, installing a landfill cap, and building a water treatment system.
But what it doesn't mean is that we're walking away. CBS still has major requirements to implement on all 3 sites. For example, at the Lemon Lane site, they still have to run the water treatment system. They have to do all the maintenance. They still have to do long-term monitoring.
In the neighborhood bordering the Lemon Lane landfill, some say the PCB issue is history. Others, though, are concerned the site isn't as clean as it should be. But Alcamo says 99.9% of the PCBs being released in the spring water there are captured, even in the big rain, thanks in part to the area's karst geology.
We have as I said, 6,000 gallon a minute treatment system on site, and we've never seen storms greater or anywhere near 6,000 gallons a minute from that spring. So we are capturing that flushing effect. That's one of the big concerns we have or had at Lemon Lane, was capturing that flushing effect that increases the PCB concentrations.
Alcamo says CBS and the EPA will continue to review each site to make sure state-mandated discharge requirements continue to be met. If PCBs or other contaminants are discovered anew, he says they will address remedies.
You know, I cannot see us shutting those plants off for many years.
City of Bloomington Communications Director Yael Cassander refers to environmental remediation as a slow walk that includes community vigilance.
Our community has been really active. You know, we have a very robust history of activism here with regard to this cleanup, and that should certainly continue.
For WTIU News, I'm Sarah Vaughn.
Residents can share their views with the EPA during a public comment period that runs through June 14th. Links to each site are available on the EPA's website. Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. IndyCar is promoting an initiative to bring more diversity into auto racing. Ahead, we visit a nearly all-female team competing in this year's Indianapolis 500. And long-haul truckers are asking the state for more parking spots at rest stops to alleviate congestion. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
Stay close to Indiana Newsdesk as we trace education issues all the way from the Capitol to your child's classroom. So many topics that arise each year in the State House affect what happens every day in the schoolhouse. The WTIU News Team is committed to helping you stay up to date with the issues that affect your family's future. Keep yourself informed. Tune in to Indiana Newsdesk, your source for regional and state in-depth news.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. Well, for the first time, a team comprised of nearly all women is competing in the Indianapolis 500. The team is part of a broader effort to bring more diversity to motorsports. As Indiana Public Broadcasting Samantha Horton reports, only 9 women and only 2 black drivers have ever competed in the greatest spectacle in racing.
The teams are preparing for this weekend's Indy 500 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Simona De Silvestro drives for Paretta Autosport and will be the only woman driver in the field of 33 cars. But that's not the only unique aspect of Paretta. The team is made up of mostly women, about 70%. That includes pit crew member Caitlin Brown. Brown is responsible for the inside front tire. Having worked as a mechanic for Team Penske in the NASCAR series, she says it hasn't hit her quite yet how much of an impact the team is having.
I'm so used to working with all men mostly now that to work with all women again has been really cool. It's not every day you can do that, especially in racing. So the opportunity to do this is really awesome.
Team owner Beth Peretta says there are women in motorsports, just not as many as she'd like to see.
I've worked in automotive and racing for many years, and it was obvious to me that this is something where women could not only belong but thrive. And there weren't a lot of women throughout the paddock. You know, most of us know each other because there aren't that many. And I just saw it as really an opportunity.
Peretta says the team will make history at what is considered the Super Bowl of racing. But she is quick to credit the women who got them here. Women like Maud Yeagle, the first woman owner of an Indy 500 team, and Janet Guthrie, the first woman to race in the Indy 500.
There is absolutely no doubt that we wouldn't be here without the hard work of the women before us, and we stand on their shoulders, and each pushed doors open in different ways for us.
Prada Autosport is allied with track owner Roger Penske's team. With that comes guidance and crossover employees, like Caitlin Brown with the pit crew. The support is a part of Penske's Race for Equality and Change initiative. It's a $1 million effort to diversify IndyCar and IMS. Penske executive Jimmy McMillan says he hopes by finding ways to engage underrepresented communities, the track can become more diverse and inclusive, from the employees to the teams to the fans.
One day people are going to turn on the TV and not say to me, you know, when I turn on TV, it looks very white. I think people are going to turn on the TV just like they do the NBA or the NFL and say it looks very American.
Rod Reed owns Force Indy, another team receiving support from Penske to bring more diversity into the sport. He says this is a much-needed start to confront issues that stem from the early days of the track.
If you look back in history, in the early 1900s, when the Indianapolis Motor Speedway started, the AAA, the current, Automobile Association of America that exists today, very blatantly did not allow women, and they never wrote about not allowing blacks, but they just didn't do it.
Force Indy is working to bring in more black drivers, mechanics, and other staff. The team competes right now in the entry-level league with the eventual goal of competing in the Indy 500. Reed says he sees his team as a talent pipeline.
My primary goal is that the individuals that are in Force Indy can move up through the ranks. So I'm actually trying to design this so we become that foundational experience for them.
Beth Peretta has a similar goal for her team and hopes competing on a large stage sparks interest for future generations to get involved in motorsports.
The best thing for me is if there is a young girl watching at home and she sees herself. That's all we want to do. And maybe 10 years from now, she'll be on pit lane.
The Peretta team will be starting in the 33rd spot for the Indy 500. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Samantha Horton.
The race is scheduled to go green Sunday at 11 a.m. and will be broadcast live on NBC. Hoosiers with electric cars will soon have a lot more high-powered stations to charge them. The state plans to give a group of Indiana utilities more than $5 million to build fast-charging stations, which can charge an electric vehicle in as little as 20 minutes. The money comes from a settlement with Volkswagen over its Clean Air Act violations. There are about 40 high-powered public charging stations currently in Indiana, half of them in Indianapolis. While rest areas give drivers a chance to stretch their legs or use the bathroom during a long trip, they are essential for long-haul truckers. Adam Pinsker explains why the trucking industry is calling on leaders to overhaul them.
It's the start of a new week at Stone Belt Trucking, and for trucker Mike Barnes, every mile offers a different perspective.
I'd love to see what's over the next hill, around the next curve. I just love to be out there in a truck.
Barnes is preparing to haul tons of limestone to the Dallas area for a building project. It's about a 12 to 13-hour drive from Bloomington, depending on road conditions. However, a federal law requires truck drivers to take at least a 10-hour break after working 11 consecutive hours.
Every truck now has ELD, which is electronic logging device. The driver has to sign into the truck. The truck shows how many miles he's driven and how long he's been running the truck.
Ted Benkart, the owner of Stonebelt Freight, says because of the rules, drivers have to plan out where they will stay in advance. But parking at rest stops in Indiana and beyond is scarce, leaving truckers like Barnes with very few options.
I had to park on an off ramp going into a truck stop because it was all full. And I was just getting up, my time was up, and I was just getting up when an Arkansas state trooper got stopped and said, "Hey, you can't park here, you got to move."
Parking on a shoulder, ramp, or in poorly lit areas is a safety risk for the trucker and other vehicles on the road. Benkart says one of his drivers found himself on the wrong side of town looking for a place to park and was robbed.
That happened in Chicago, where the driver was robbed while he was waiting to make a delivery.
Private truck stops offer a place for truckers to shower, eat, and sleep, but spots there are limited and must be paid for in advance by the trucker. The industry is working with these companies to expand their locations in Indiana and beyond.
The 2020 edition of the American Transportation Research Institute report has moved truck parking to the number 3 greatest concern.
According to INDOT, there are 28 rest areas around the state, including welcome centers. Each of these locations average 48 spots for trucks, tractor trailers, and buses. INDOT says it is in the process of upgrading Indiana's rest areas statewide on a rolling basis. When the work is all done, they should go from a total of 1,400 spots for trucks to about 2,500 statewide. Benkart is hoping that other states will follow Indiana's lead.
But adding truck stops in Indiana would help drivers from other states. Likewise, if adding truck stops or rest areas in Missouri would help our guys that are going west.
In March, a bipartisan group of House members introduced the Truck Parking Safety Act, which would address the critical shortage of truck parking around the nation.
There are more than 1 million trucks that go through Indiana each day. And, it's typically not the Indiana drivers that are using the Indiana parking places. It's spaces, it's people coming through headed other places.
In addition to expanding rest areas, the Indiana Motor Trucking Association is hoping the Biden administration will consider allotting a significant portion of money from its infrastructure bill to expanding the interstate system. Benkart believes the government should take a more targeted approach to expanding highways.
We don't need 4 more lanes between Indianapolis and California, but we need help in specific areas where we're going through major metro areas.
The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the importance of trucks, which bring vital goods from coast to coast. As traffic increases on our nation's roads heading into the summer, Benkart is asking the driving public not to forget about them.
Just remember, when you see that truck on the road, it's not a nuisance. That's your livelihood.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Adam Penske.
Columbus is on its way to becoming the buzz of Indiana. Holden Absher reports on the city's effort to become the first bee city in the state.
Last week, volunteers planted a pollinator garden as a kickoff effort to earn Bee City USA designation from the Xerces Society. The downtown installation of native plants not only revitalizes an unused space, but also supports native pollinators. Because without them, our life would look a lot different.
Pollinators, not just bees, but butterflies, hummingbirds, everything. They are responsible for 1 out of every 3 bites of our food that's on our plate.
The Columbus Pollinator Committee is behind the effort, and its members represent organizations such as the City Parks Department, Library, and Landmark Columbus, a building, landscape, and art preservation effort. Eric Riddle is the Pollinator Committee chair and says Bee City designation would shed light on other areas of Columbus.
I think it would gain more attention and awareness of good projects that are happening, kind of put these projects on the map.
In order for the designation to become official, the Columbus City Council must formally create an ongoing committee to maintain pollinator areas. Additionally, there must be a pest management plan, native plants list, and annual report. Riddle hopes a resolution will pass this fall. If successful, Columbus would join more than 200 other cities across the nation, and one volunteer hopes other Hoosier communities are close behind.
The fact that we are in the heartland of America and Indiana, is an agriculture state and bees are important for agriculture, I think this is a great step, and I'm really excited for Columbus to take this step.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Holden Absher.
And the Little 500 returned after a year off due to COVID-19 and had all the excitement just no fans. Jet Black's Rob Krahulik took the lead on the final lap of the men's race and pulled away for the victory on Wednesday. It was the first title for Jet Black, who beat the Cutters by half second in the 70th running of the event. The Cutters had won the last two races before last year's was canceled. Delta Gamma won the women's race by a full lap over Alpha Z Delta.
Honestly, I was kind of confused what lap I was on in the last two laps, and then they said last lap, and I was like, all right, we're going to go for it.
It was the fourth title for Delta Gamma. And that's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville Fiber Internet, streaming TV, home security and automation in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. lawmg.com. IU Alumni Association, connecting IU's network of alumni and sharing the Indiana spirit through scholarships, advocacy, and volunteerism. alumni.iu.edu. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.